Hi there, everybody. We're on break right now. Hello, Mayor Goodwin. I see Mayor Felton was able to get on as well. Hi, Amy. Good morning. Great. We're still live in the session. Folks are taking a short break. We're gonna start maybe in about 3 minutes. And we'll have Brian and Jeremy introduce you all. Just let me know if it's helpful for me to send over the discussion questions once more so it's at the top of your inbox, but if you have them and we're good, great. Great. So we will feel free to turn off your cameras and mic right now, and then we'll give you a prompt to come back on. Thanks. And Mayor Sam, I'm just going to check to see if your video and audio is working. So I just gave you a prompt to turn your video on so we can check that. Or you can try turning on your mic as well. Hello, Mayor Felton. Good morning. Good morning. You can turn your mic off so I can do a quick audio check for you.
Okay.
Great, good. We're still live right now. Our participants are taking a short break. We're gonna begin in a couple minutes here, and Jeremy and Brian will introduce all the panelists. Thanks again for joining us today.
Sure, I'm pleased to be here.
Great.
Hey, Kelly.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit of how many are in the audience and exactly who?
Sure. So this is a statewide trails conference for West Virginia, and we have the attendees are fluctuating right now because they're coming on and off for the break, about 100 total.
Okay.
And they are an audience of trail planners and advocates of all trail types, non-motorized mostly. And we've also got folks from convention and visitors bureaus, health departments, local elected officials. So a really great audience. Yep.
Yep. Great. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yep. And for those of you who might still be listening, feel free to put any comments in the chat, any thoughts that you might have for this panel. You can also just introduce yourself and your affiliation so we can see who you are and where you're coming from. And we'll get started in about 1 minute. Okay, Brian and Jeremy, just to keep us on time, let's maybe go ahead and get convened here. Great. Okay. And then when Jeremy is able to pop back on, we can go ahead and get started. We've got a really great panel for everyone. We're going to be going until 11 o'clock when we'll have a...
Kelly, you have to let me back on.
I'm so sorry. Okay.
Great.
Great. Good. So we'll go ahead and get started again with this second panel in our mega advocacy session. And I'm going to hand it over to Brian and Jeremy to introduce our great panelists.
All right, well, welcome back. And again, my name is Jeremy Morris, and I am working with the Rail Trail Conservancy and West Virginia Trail on building their legislative caucus and some of the advocacy issues that we're going to take on in the coming year. And I'm very excited about the next portion of this morning's panel session. And what we're going to bring is talking about local issues and advocacy at the local issues and kind of translating those local issues up to the state level and the importance of just local trails. And we're going to give you a flavor of both sort of rural West Virginia and rural Ohio and also larger cities in West Virginia and Ohio. And so we have with us Mayor Amy Goodwin of Charleston, West Virginia, and Mayor Sam Felton, Mayor of Marlinton, West Virginia. We have Brian Hausch, RTC Midwest Policy Manager and Village of Yellow Springs Council President, and Amy Dingle, Director of Outdoor Connections, Five River Metro Parks from Dayton, Ohio. And so I'm going to let them each tell you about their community, their background, why trails are important to their constituents, and what their priorities are in terms of quality of life and recreation, and how they are helping deliver that to their constituents. And so we'll get kicked off with Mayor Goodwin and learn a little bit about Charleston and outdoor recreation in Charleston.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for including me in today's panel. My name is Amy Goodwin, and I'm the mayor of the city of Charleston, which is the capital city here in the state of West Virginia, the Mountain State. We're called the Mountain State for a reason. We have more trees than we do people. In the city of Charleston, I've been mayor for 3 years, and it's been a concerted effort of ours to not only increase the number of trails, and so I know that we'll be talking about that here in a little bit, but also to maintain and fund the trails we currently have, and making sure that we have the funding and the resources to do that. We have 3 new exciting trail projects that are happening here in the city of Charleston, so I'm excited to talk about that. But this is what I do know as a former commissioner of tourism for the state of West Virginia and the Deputy Secretary of Commerce for the state of West Virginia. Trails mean money for cities. Outdoor recreation is money for the city of Charleston. The return on investment that we put in to not only our trails, but to all of our recreational facilities is not just something that attracts tourists and visitors, but also increases the quality of life, which is of course paramount in a capital city where we have so much of the hustle and bustle. We also know that in larger cities that folks are moving to the city for a reason. They want to get rid of their cars and they want to be able to walk and bike to places, but we have to make sure that we have those places they can utilize to get to work, those trails as well. So thanks again for having me. I'm really excited to listen and to learn from all of the other distinguished panel members. So thank you so much, Jeremy.
Thank you, Mayor Goodwin. And we'll go next to Mayor Felton, Mayor Marlinton, and also chairperson of the Mon Forest Towns there in the Mon Forest region.
All right, good morning to each of you. I'm excited to follow Mayor Amy, the first lady mayor of our capital city. And glad to have her with us this morning as well. But and even though we're only about a 2.5 hour drive between the two cities, we are represented by the background. You can see the difference in our two cities. Marlinton in rural Pocahontas County is one of the most rural counties in the state, actually. We have more rivers that originate here than we do traffic lights. We've got 3 traffic lights in 1,000 square miles, about 8,000 year-round citizens. I always like to share that Marlinton is the oldest continuous settlement west of the Alleghenies, 1749. Where the city is older than the county and the county is older than the state. You can think about that for a while after this meeting, but we're unique in so many areas. And the folks in the Charleston area for a number of years, when they had a break, they would come to Pocahontas County, lots of camps and so forth in the area already. We have 5 state parks: Cranberry Glades, Black Bear Habitat, Cass Scenic Railroad, the Quiet Zone up at the Green Bank Telescope. But we've had a history also of fires and floods in Marlinton. Downturn in the timber business, not necessarily statewide, but in our county, because we're about 75% state and federally owned. So there's not a lot of timbering that goes on like in previous years. Turn of the century, timber really is what caused the town to grow here. The railroads that were, 2 or 3 trains a day that passed through this town, that has not happened in more than 30 years now, or 40 years, I guess, maybe. So we had to start looking at reinventing ourselves. I was always more from the industry side, but could not ignore the fact that we're in one of the most scenic areas of the state. And so as we began to recreate our local economy, it seemed a natural fit to look to the trails and what we've seen going on. As I've been listening the last couple of days in this conference, trails are economic factors, cannot be denied. And so the Mon Forest Partnership, the Mon Forest Towns Partnership, I should say, 10 towns, 8 counties. I wanted, with tongue in cheek, I usually say that I wanted to think I became chairperson of the Mon Forest Partnership because 1/3 of the acreage of the Mon Forest is in Pocahontas County. But usually I think it was because I missed one meeting and I came back as chairperson. That's kind of how that happened. So, but I'm pleased to be able to join with partnerships throughout this region. The very thing, and I think Amy would agree with this, the very thing that makes West Virginia so unique and such a wonderful place to live is also an obstacle so far as funding and human capacity. We go to different meetings and it's the same dozen faces usually in each of the meetings. We don't have a lot of human capacity with regard to enough people, volunteers and so forth to do all the work. So I think that the Mon Forest Towns Partnership and the regional approach where that we could maximize our funding and our human capacity has been one of the great successes of the program so far. And we've got a lot of people rowing now in the same direction. And it still amazes me that a lot of people from outside, I've done a interview a few weeks ago with regard to how do you get these many people to work together, for one thing. But it's working here because I think in West Virginia, we see that it's time for us to sell ourselves. We do have a beautiful state. We've got wonderful people, and we're within this close proximity to what 60% of the nation's population or something is within a half a day's drive. So lots of good things going on, and I've already talked longer than I should have. So it's good to be with you.
All right, thanks, Mayor Felton. We'll go next to Brian.
Hey, thanks, Jeremy. Good morning, everyone. So I'm coming at you from the village of Yellow Springs, which we're about 3,700 residents, and we're actually located right on the Little Miami Scenic Trail, which is part of the nation's largest paved trail network. So it actually connects us down to Amy's neck of the woods in Dayton. And I think we're an interesting model for some West Virginia towns because, again, we're small, we've got a lot of rural surroundings, but we're very lucky in having a lot of capacity. We've got a lot of folks that have background in walking, biking trails. And I will say that we were really lucky 25 plus years ago that there was vision around building the trail, which, by the way, had a lot of opposition, like these projects often do, less and less so now. But that's been a really key aspect of how we've sustained our thriving and healthy community. And without that trail and the businesses that are close to that and just all the activity that we have, we would not be in the place that we are now. And so, I can't say enough about how important this is. In my Rails to Trails role, I work a lot with local and state electeds. And so I'm going to add a few thoughts, throughout the panel discussion that I think might be useful. And I'm also a resource. Part of my job is to help support the advocacy activities that you all are looking at. And so great to be here. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks, Brian. And Amy Dingle, sorry.
Yeah,
Amy's
yeah.
on the panel.
No problem. Hi, everybody. I'm with Five Rivers Metro Parks, and we are a conservation agency that park district, special use park district that serves Montgomery County, Ohio, which is the Dayton region. And Dayton's kind of a mid-sized city, about 245,000. But the whole region that we serve throughout the entire county is about 845,000. And we're really geographically located in a position where as Sam mentioned, that we can reach about 60% of the population within 5 hours. And that's been a really important pillar for part of our shift and how we change the image of Dayton. We're located on the I-70, I-75 corridor. And so that's been important. But as a park district, we protect over 16,000 acres of land, rivers and trails. And we, along with 12 other trail managers, well, 11, we're the 12th, I guess, do manage part of that 350 miles of connected trail, which is the nation's largest paved trail network. The reason we're able to do that, we also manage 60 miles of water trail, 90 miles of hiking trail, 40 miles of equestrian, and about 10 miles of mountain bike trail. And we were really blessed because of our really of a tragedy, the 1913 flood in our region. Our conservancy district created earthen dams around 5 major points around the county, and then also levees along our river systems. And so because of that, our first park director about 55 years ago was a landscape architect and was able to align our parks with those retention basins behind those earthen dams. And then along the levees, that's where we were able really to make the connectivity of our trail system. And so that's a unique feature for the Dayton region that we've been able to capitalize on as we changed our image of really being known as in 2010 by Forbes magazine as the top 10 most dying city. And then by 2017 by Outside magazine, we're voted the most top 25 best outdoor towns. And so that image has been something we've been working on as a park district for since the recreation entity came on, which has really been a short while. It's been since 2006 that the organization focused on recreation and quality of life issues. And so as our main pillar is to connect people to nature and healthy lifestyles, but we also recognize the economic development and quality of life that trails bring. And so for us, the lifeblood of the image and the change as we were rapidly losing those manufacturing businesses, we had to quickly turn around and sync the community with our assets and what we did have as things that could promote our city and our image to help retain young people that were going to school, but also keep people in the region without moving to those manufacturing jobs. So since 2010, we've been recognized in National Geographic, Backpacker Magazine, Dirt Rag Magazine, Outside Magazine. We also hosted the International Trail Symposium. And I bring all of that up because it was all part of a vision to really synergize our community to work together and be proud. But we also brought in outside things to showcase those that live here. You know, sometimes you got to bring outside to build credibility, right? So we had to showcase we really have something. It's not just us that think that, people from the outside do too. And so that's been an important part of kind of changing our image. And then really focusing on current priorities, site planning and trail connectivity around our region, and then largely into the state, you know, the region and the state. And then as a park district, we're focusing on a few things that get people to trails. So heart healthy trails and trying to connect, working with public health, and then also mindfulness walks. You know, everyone's really starting to recognize all these, that mental health is really important. And we all know that outdoors and spending time outdoors can help bring that up. So working with the local hospitals and public health, and then tourism districts and our CVBs, that's all really important for the collaboration to be successful. And then lastly, is a national program called Parks RX, and that's working with physicians to actually give prescriptions to nature and getting out on trails, and trails are destinations. So those are kind of some of our current priorities and where we're working. A little background about us.
All right. Well, thank you, Amy. And we're going to move into our questions now. And Brian, I'm going to start off with you, and we're going to talk about best practices for advocating, and maybe you and Mayor Goodwin can talk about sort of your experiences and what you feel are the best practices for advocating with elected officials at a local level. And I just want to remind all the panelists, maybe spend about a minute or two with each of you, kind of giving your thoughts on each of these questions. So Brian, why don't we start with you, and then we'll pass off to Mayor Goodwin, and then we'll finish up with Mayor Felton, and then on to Ms. Dingle.
That's great. Yeah, I want to just kind of underscore some things I heard from Amy Dingle around having a vision. I cannot say enough about having a plan and being able to articulate that in terms of advocacy. And we're going to share some examples of how you can, put together a one-pager later on in the discussion. I also want to underscore what Mayor Goodwin said around money. Money talks. And when I think about how you make that case, it's really important to understand those quality of life benefits that really come out of this. And then I think another thing that's exciting to talk about here is what Mayor Felton highlighted around capacity. And, we see a similar thing where, it's the usual suspects that are always there. And I think part of this discussion is really to help people, understand that there are resources and tools, and that advocacy is not that scary. So I'll say, briefly from my perspective as a local elected official, it's very important that residents and constituents bring projects forward. When I take the lead on a project, it can often look like it's my pet project. And while I want to be there to support it, it's important that those initiatives are driven by the constituents. I think related to that, it's important to think about not just talking to your elected officials, but also to the city manager or the public works directors and other folks, so that they can also help you build that case and make those kinds of inroads. And then finally, I'll say that being able to tell a story is one of the most appealing things, I think, from a decision maker's perspective. Data is good and it's important in making the case, but this is why advocates that are new to this are some of the most effective, because it is just about sharing your experiences and why trails are important to you.
All right, thanks, Brian. Mayor Goodwin.
Thank you so much. I'll kind of take the other side to that. I think that folks need to demand more of their public officials. I think that it is really easy for public officials to sit behind desks. This is a standing desk, by the way, I'm not sitting. But if public officials are sitting behind desks, it's really hard to get to them sometimes. Let's be clear. I mean, before I was mayor and before I was the tourism commissioner, I was a team member and a communications director for governors, senators, and a presidential candidate who lost. So we won't talk about that guy from Boston, but it's really easy to become closed doors. And so I would say for the folks on the call is that we have a mandatory community meetings. You know, people say I think I've heard a couple of people say we only see the same faces showing up. Well, then you're hosting your meetings in the wrong place. We are hosting our meetings in the wrong place. If I'm still seeing the same people show up, then that means to me that I'm truly not getting into the neighborhoods and the communities that I need to. Those folks are going to show up, whether I'm on the East End or the West Side or South Hills or Canal City or North Charleston. And so it's my job as a public official to make sure that I do community meetings in which people can get to and at times that they can get to. Hosting a 5 o'clock meeting on a Wednesday night is not helpful for the mom of two who's got stuff to do. I'm a mom of a couple of those folks as well. So I think that's number one. Number two, Brian was right. I mean, what would absolutely drive me to drink when I was tourism commissioner was folks would come to me and say, well, you know, tourism, you have all the fun stuff. No, I have the money stuff. I have the things that are driving people to this community. And so when you come with the plan, and you guys know this already, probably because you're the people that show up, but come with me with a financial sheet, come with the dollars and cents of it. Everybody knows this is fun, yay. But what I want to see are the return on investment issues. And so we're getting ready to build another trail system at a great park that we have, and it's $350,000. And I wanted it, but I had to convince people that it was worth $350,000 of taxpayers' money to put in a pump track and a walking and biking trail around a golf course. What's the value of that? And so while we're the fun and games group, we also have to be seen as the financial group. But most important is demand that we show up, and we show up at the right times in the right places for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Goodwin. And Mayor Felton, can you talk a little bit about best practices there, you know, that you've learned as mayor of Marlington and working in rural West Virginia?
I'm not sure that I'm the right person for all of the best practices, but I will say this, that obviously before I became involved, there was a group of mountain bikers around the snowshoe area that had become known as SHARC. That's Snowshoe Highlands Area Resort Collaborative, okay? And were very instrumental and remain so with regard to bringing the IMBA status to the Snowshoe Highlands Ride Center. They have continued working with Trail Solutions, which is a construction arm of IMBA. And our county is already approaching over 400 miles of trails here in the county. I know that one of the things that attracted me early on, we've got a nationally known Rails to Trails, our Greenbrier River Trail that literally comes right through the middle of town. And so there is a volunteer group, once again, that are committed to just picking up trash, painting signs, keeping limbs out of the trail and that type of thing. A lot of the best practices, I do believe, is just seeing a piece of trash on the way by and picking it up. You know, you're already there. Let's each person doing their part. And there is a concept with regard to leave no trace. And we're trying to promote that as well. That as we use these facilities and pass through the beauty of the area, as we bring more people, that will become harder to keep those areas beautiful. So I think that early on, we're trying to instill in the users that we have an asset here. It's a product that we're going to depend on going forward. I do believe that the mountain biking and the trail systems in a few short years will surpass or at least equal the winter activity that we have at the local ski resort, which, by the way, up in for the last 20 years, about 80% of the hotel motel tax has been developed during the winter months. And I think that we'll see a change in that. And with that change, the summertime activity that the mountain biking is bringing will stabilize the economy. You know, the snowshoe, for instance, will become a year-round resort. Restaurants, we've already got a couple of new ice cream shops and the like. A new bike shop has come to town and that type of thing because of the extra activity. So that's not necessarily the best practices per se, but I believe that it does have to do with just being good stewards of what we already have in the area. It's a tremendous asset for us. And let me also, just one other item with regard to IMBA. You know, that status came just in time for the World Cup, by the way, in August and September of 2019. And in about 13 short months, we moved from the bronze status to the silver status. That's a big deal for the East. And we've developed a goal of 3 to 5 years, and I think that it's very doable, that we will become a gold status IMBA Ride Center. And that definitely is a big deal. There is statistics that says that elevates the economy and the traffic and everything that we want to see good happening about the trails that's going on, not only in this region, but around the state. It will be good for West Virginia and for the East. As a matter of fact, a gold status would be the only IMBA Ride Center that with gold status in the East. So it would definitely be a big deal for all of us in the region.
All right, thanks, Mayor Felton. Let's switch gears to Amy Dingle and talk about best practices on a large scale in a large metro area.
Yeah, thanks. Congratulations, Mayor Felton. That is a big deal. That's awesome. For us, you know, the key word is advocacy and not lobbying, right? We are a park district that represents the public, and so that is important. But with that said, advocacy is a major pillar of what we do, and so much so that it's written into job descriptions for key staff. You know, whether it's our bike coordinators or our water coordinators, you know, it is really important to have an understanding, and we represent those users, but of the smaller constituencies. And where I think we've been successful is we, as a government entity and a county park district that does good work, we build credibility with those user groups. And so what's been successful for us is understanding their needs and being able to connect those needs into the greater plan that's happening within our plans or other plans with other organizations. And so, you know, we work with the nonprofits, we work with the small bike groups or trail advocacy group, you know, smaller nonprofits, that kind of thing. And I can't overemphasize relationships, right? So for us, having a personal relationship with our local elected officials, letting them know our priorities, but also trying to really think through what their priorities are and how what we're doing can connect to the bigger picture on a state level. I think it's really important to understand everyone's view so that you can make an impact when you're trying to message. And it's also important, that vision and having a plan, it's important to be able to talk almost in sound bites. I know our marketing people will appreciate that, but in a succinct way, right? You need to resonate. And I'll underscore what Brian said about stories, right? That's what people remember because it yanks at the emotional heartstrings a little bit. And so it is important to be able to weave in data, no doubt about it. That resonates, and everyone's really focused on dollars and funding. But if you can connect to those stories in some way and make it memorable and connected to their game plan overall, I mean, we're in the long fight here, right? For trails, you got to have a long vision here. And so you may have some quick wins for the city or, you know, some connectivity there, but really connecting to the big picture and over the long haul of changing legislators, that's been important for us. And that's where our vision and our plan is really come into play for us. So.
All right, thank you. Looks like we lost Mayor Felton for a second, and maybe we'll get him back here in a minute. That's one of our issues here in West Virginia is connectivity. And certainly out in Pocahontas County, it becomes an issue sometimes. So hopefully Mayor Felton will join us again here in a second. Brian, I want to go down to that third question on our list and talk about transportation alternative funding. And I'm going to let you take that first and maybe frame that for the other panelists here. With transportation alternative funding increasing by 70%, along with a new federal program for connecting active transportation networks, as well as the American Rescue Plan Act dollars. What do you see as opportunities for communities across our states?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. And so we're going to be at the end of this session doing a brief federal policy update. And so many of you may already know that there have been some positives in the reauthorization of the U.S. Transportation Federal Act. And one of those is an increase to transportation alternatives. 70% is pretty significant. And that either that ultimately goes through the Department of Transportation and depending on your state setup to the MPOs, to the metropolitan organizations. So that along with Rails to Trails advocated for a new fund that is about basically connecting active transportation networks, so walking and biking infrastructure, and that's being funded right now. It's a one-time funding stream, couple $100 million, but hopefully something that's going to continue. And then certainly the American Rescue Plan dollars has been an exciting opportunity, and I see Mayor Felton's back. One of the things that we discussed earlier with our Indiana caucus co-chair was the fact that Indiana, as a state, invested $16 million of their American Rescue Plan dollars in their Next Level Trails program. I also know that lots of municipalities, so on a local and regional level, are looking at investing those ARP dollars. And I think, it will be interesting to hear from both the mayors and also from Amy Dingle coming from the parks side, what your thoughts are about how that can potentially help us maintain and build our trails. So thanks, Jeremy.
Mayor Goodwin, why don't you start us there? What are you excited about with the infrastructure plan?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things I'm really excited about. But first of all, before I forget, Mayor Felton, I know you know this. I have 2 teenage boys, and we are big outdoor enthusiasts. My husband's a mountain biker, but my boys are big skiers and snowboarders. And so, as Sam Goodwin likes to always remind me, that Marlington is his favorite city, I always have to remind him what I do for a living, and to please not say that out loud to anyone, because I love that city, but that's not the city where your mama is the mayor. So having participated with both of my boys in the Great Greenbrier River Race, I slog my way through. My children actually compete in it. I am just a slogger, jogger, take your time paddling kind of gal. So I wanted to give a big shout out because the Goodwins are our second favorite city. But there's a couple there are a couple of things I'm really excited about that I do want to talk about. And I don't want to be cute or coy about this. I think that a lot of folks just don't ask for money. They just don't ask the federal government or go out for these grants that they think are just so huge and cumbersome, and they'll never get it. I certainly am not going to overstep an announcement from Senator Capito or Senator Manchin, but I'll just go ahead and say that we are going to have next week the largest trails announcement in the history of the city of Charleston. It's going to be next week. And it is because we went out on a ledge and we asked for federal funding. And we said we live in a river city and we don't utilize our river. Hey, y'all, can you help us out? And they did. And the blessing that I want to share with folks, whether you like them, love them, or hate them, the Biden administration put together a lot of really good folks in their administration, including Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who has the most outstanding assistant deputy secretary of government relations, who always calls me back, who was the first one to call me and ask if I need something, and helped us with a couple of these massive transportation grants. And as Brian noted, these federal earmarks, which, fortunately for us, they're back after a decade and some change, Brian, right? And so we put our foot forward and we asked for stuff. And so to not be afraid to do that, but the final point I'll make here, Jeremy, is just saying this, that while we're here to talk about fun and great stuff, I will say the U.S. Conference of Mayors, which I'm fortunate to participate in, and the National League of Cities, mayors all across the country are investing in outdoor venues right now, period. That is where most of the investment is going. And because COVID has taught us a couple of different things, right? But the one thing that it's taught us, not only in the city of Charleston, but across the country, is a statistic that you don't see on the front page of papers, but we probably should. And we probably should talk about the hard things, that the rate of suicidal ideations and the rate of suicide attempts, especially with our young people, are through the roof. And that should make everybody stop and say, hold on, we've got to do better. And we talk about, and we say to kids, go outside and play. And we don't have them a place, we don't give them a place to do it, nor the programming behind doing it, because I can build parks all day long, y'all. We're getting really, really good at it in West Virginia. But if I don't attach program and program funding to that park or that facility, then it doesn't happen. So I wanted to at least throw that out there, Jeremy. And we were talking about policy, but that was part of our grant request, is to connect the kids who are my kids that live on the West Side, that are lower income. These are predominantly communities of color who have very limited access to anything. In the state of West Virginia, we have a population, our African American population is 3%. In the city of Charleston on the West Side, it's 17%. And they have been disproportionately impacted by investments in other parts of the city and other parts of the state. And so focusing on our children who need us, who haven't had us there also, has been a priority. But again, I go back, the good news is we've got a lot of really good folks on Capitol Hill that are paying attention. And also you've got in your chat group box, somebody said, panelists, please shout out who your supporters are. Thank you to Delegate Mike Pushkin, who is always supportive of our rails, our trails, our bike lanes, Senator Rich Lindsay as well. And I've got to give a shout out to my paddlers as well. We just put in the very first, again, you see my photo, Jeremy, right? We live in Charleston. We live on a river city. I'm in the river right now. But we had no safe place to put in a kayak. Having done it myself dangerously over 4 lanes of road, dragging my poor little kayak and my stand-up paddleboard, which is just all to hell beat up now. We actually put one in right by our Coliseum and Convention Center, but that's with the support of our senators and our delegates here as well. So thank you. That was a really long answer to a very short and concise question.
Thank you, Mayor Goodwin. We got one more question. I'm gonna let Amy Dingle wrap things up for us. Last question is, what resources do advocates need to help gain traction with decision makers? What's the most important thing that our trail advocates in the audience can take home with them to help influence decision makers?
That's a deep and convoluted answer depending on where you're from. But I think it's been a heart of what we've been talking about is really having a vision and a plan, I think is key. I think understanding how to work with all constituencies. So that's not just who you're representing for your municipality or your park district, but it's understanding what the goals are for your local CVB and for public health and the tourism industry and marketing. And so we've been really successful in Ohio because we're really trying to work on that connectivity and build almost like a capacity building of alignment with these agencies, these statewide agencies. That's really important for us. So public health, our Department of Transportation, DNR, all of those groups. And so when folks like me apply for a project for funding, we can work together with all those guys with alignment for the permitting, so it doesn't take half of a career to actually get a project completed. But I think, just bringing it back to what you're really asking, I think building traction with those elected officials specifically is resonating with understanding what they're trying to do and make it understood that our work is their work, right? That trails are bipartisan and everyone loves them. And hopefully if we're talking about transportation funding, these 10-foot wide corridors, and in our case paved, are gateways for those that aren't comfortable or don't feel welcome in the outdoors or don't feel safe. They're actually a gateway to get them involved. And it does connect to quality of life and healthy alternatives. And we do need to start thinking about shaping our cities and our rural areas in a different format. Mayor Goodwin is not wrong when she says that, this mental health thing, it's really serious and we need to normalize it and give people, trails are destinations, right? They're not only economic drivers, but they're also destinations. And so they really do allow us to wrap around an image together and start to try to resonate in our community to get people involved and build that quality of life opportunity. So I think just, trying to connect with them personally, trying to build those relationships, staying on it, not stopping, but also understanding what locally everyone's wanting and trying to wrap that together in one plan. That is the best way to influence decision makers. And then staying involved, going to the state building and asking for those funding efforts or other things and getting to know them personally and keeping that relationship. That's important because I agree, a lot of people don't communicate or they think that it's at arm's reach to talk to local elected officials, and that's what they want, right? They want to hear from us, so we need to build those relationships.
Yep. Hey, and I'm going to jump in real quick as we wrap it up because we had a couple things that we were going to pop up on the screen real quick. Resource wise, I love how Amy's captured it, and I think the